Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today we're going to sew along together the Smighty wallet or Smighty purse by Studio 77. This is such a cute little fun make. It is great for domestic machines for sure. I made mine in all cottons. I don't know if I would make it in faux leathers just because, as you will see in the tutorial, it does start getting rather thick in around these areas and you don't really want it to be too bulky, but this is just such an amazing little purse for in all cottons. It is written in all cottons as well. My biggest challenge with this one was trying to figure out what interfacings to use. Emma is over in the UK and she mentions a few different types of interfacings they use there. At the beginning of this tutorial, I do have a list of the interfacings I did use and in which parts, all written down. So if you need that, you can definitely do it or refer to that. First, let's give you a little tour of this bag. Okay, so this is such a great pattern for showing off really fun turn locks or flip locks. This one is from Blue Cala Patterns, this wasp one. On the inside, there's a zipper pocket here. Again, this cute little bumblebee zipper is from Blue Cala. I just love it. Couldn't resist making this without those items. We have a slip pocket. We have 4 card slots there and another slip pocket. It's a really quick and fun make. This would be great to have on market tables. I think they would sell really well, especially when you can use such fun prints in your cottons. This cotton, I don't know what it is. I had this in my scrap bin. I've had it for like 4 years. I made client of So Sweetness bag in this once upon a time. I used EB Fuse Heavy in here, which could be replaced with Decavol Light for my 2 main panels. Again, I have a list of these when we start going through supplies, when we get going. All of my cotton I have backed with EB Fuse Light, which is a medium woven interfacing. This blue center pocket here, I backed with medium or EB Fuse medium or an 809. I think next time I would actually just stick with EB Fuse Light or an SF101 or something, and that just because it does get so thick. The EB Fuse Heavy worked really well for the outside parts of this bag. Again, it's just like a Decavol Light. So those are the interfacings I would suggest. Oh, and for my card slots, I did use a EB Fuse medium outside of the seam allowances for my card slots. That's my go-to for the card slots. Again, all these EB Fuse products are from Emmeline bags. An equivalent sort of to the EB Fuse that I used to use before the EB Fuse medium was the Pellon 809. The difference is the medium is a woven, unlike the 809, which is not. The EB Fuse products just fuse so incredibly well. So I do recommend those if you're in North America and need to get your hands on those interfacings. If you're in the UK, definitely use the interfacings that Emma has recommended as well. I'm sure they're great. I don't have any experience with them. So I hope that I found interfacings that worked well for this. In mine, it turned out great. What else? Yeah, so all my hardware in this one is Blue Cala. All my interfacing is Emmeline bags. Amazing pattern by Emma at Studio 777. Thank you, Emma, for allowing me to do this tutorial for you. Anyways, I don't know what else to say about it. How about we get to making it and then I'll catch you guys on the other side. Limited hardware, you're going to need number 5 zipper tape, number 5 zipper pull, and a turn lock or magnetic snap. Interfacings used. All pieces I backed with EB Fuse Light, a medium woven. Card slots, EB Fuse medium or 8 and 9. PP5 pieces times 2, EB Fuse medium. PP8 exterior and PP5 times 1. Exteriors all with EB Fuse Heavy or Decavol Light. Okay, here's my card slots I backed with my medium woven or my EB Fuse medium. My 2 card slot accent pieces. These are your 2 PP2 pieces, or 3 of them, 2 backed with medium EB Fuse medium, the other one was just EB Fuse Light. my main piece and my lining piece for the front pocket pieces, my 2 pocket lining pieces, and my exterior flaps and my lining flap. My exterior I have backed with EB Fuse Heavy. All right, so we are going to work on our zipper pocket section first. So what we're going to do is find the top centers. You will see on the back of this piece, of my main piece, I have cut out of my interfacing the rectangle for the zipper to place in. I'm going to take my zipper lining piece here. I'm going to measure down about 1/2 inch or so, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from each side and down from the top, making a rectangle. I did 3/4 of an inch. Next time I think I would do a 1/2 inch. Measure in from those lines 1/4 inch, draw another line in between those horizontal lines and down the middle. Draw your V's out just like you would do for any zipper pocket. Okay, put this right sides together with the main piece. We are measuring down 3/8 of an inch from the top centered. And we're going to use a pin just to hold that in place while we take this to the machine and sew around that outside rectangle that we had drawn. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to cut in between those 2/4 inch lines like so. Go back in with your scissors, get right to the line, and then cut out those V sections as close as you can to the stitching without cutting into the stitching. Then go ahead and push the lining piece through that hole, bringing these 2 items wrong sides together. Take it to the iron and give that seam a really, really good press. Now that that's done, we are going to go ahead and add our zipper in. Now I'm using double-sided tape. You can do this on a domestic machine as well. Just make sure that you are leaving enough space around the rectangle without the tape in by just over 1/8 of an inch or so. So when you're top stitching, it does not gum up your needle. Take off the top part of the tape paper and line it up nice and centered. Stick it down to the top of the zipper tape like so. Once you have that in place, go ahead and do the same with the bottom, making sure our zipper tape is nice and straight and our teeth are nice and straight there. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch around that with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm pulling my threads long because I don't want to have a back stitch type buildup of thread there. You're more than welcome to backstitch. That is just not something I usually do. Now that I'm a little ways away from that, I'm pulling on my starting bobbin thread, bring up a loop so I can pull my top thread through, continuing on with my top stitching. And as I start coming back to the start again, I want to make sure that my needle lands in that very first start hole of the very first starting stitch. I hand crank so I have a little more control. Once you get there, pull your threads long, hold on to those threads so you don't lose track of which one is your bobbin thread. Give your bobbin thread a little bit of a yank to pull up a loop to pull that top thread through. And then go ahead and tie those 4 strands off in the back with 3 or 4 knots. Okay, so now I'm just going to trim up my zipper tape because it was just a little bit too long here. And then I'm going to take my other lining piece and I'm going to put it right sides together with the lining piece we have attached. And I'm going to match up all of the raw edges of just those lining pieces around all 4 sides. Then we're going to take this to the machine, making sure we are folding our exterior piece out of the way like so, and stitch around all 4 sides with about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. There we go. So now I'm just going to trim the seam allowance of just that lining piece. We're not cutting into that exterior piece, down to about 1/4 of an inch or so. Next, we're going to take the lining piece to the section, so the PP1 pattern piece, and line up the very top edge and clip it in place. And we're going to sew across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, what we want to do is bring these wrong sides together and give it a really good press. Just like so. So now we're going to measure in 3/8 of an inch from each of the top sides here, and then we are going to top stitch in between those marks. Being very careful not to go past those 3/8 of an inch marks. So very similar to how we put the exterior and the lining piece together. Actually, make sure this measures exactly like the measurements in the pattern, which mine does. We're going to take our the two pieces that are going to be our slip pocket, and we're going to do them just like we did with this, putting them wrong sides together and then top stitching within those 3/8 of an inch mark, which we've done. Now we're going to go ahead and work on our card slots. So on one side I have marked top and I have marked lines as per the pattern measurements. So make sure you check there for that. For that first line, I'm putting it right sides together, lining up that line, giving it a good press. Then I'm going to take this whole piece and flip it over, so that folded edge is now going to be on the left. And I like to use a piece of cardstock for doing my card slots when I'm doing wrong sides together so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm lining my cardstock right up against that line, folding it wrong sides together, giving it a press, and then folding it right sides together, and we can see the line here, so we don't need the cardstock, but fold right up against that line, give it a good press, and continue this until you have formed all 4 card slots. Coco came to say hi to us. Okay, then once that's done, straighten out your card slots if you need to, get them placed nicely, and give it a good press. Okay, so this should be measuring as per the pattern for measurements. Double check that we're good. And then we're going to make sure that a card definitely fits in these card slots nice and even, which we do. And we're going to go ahead and top stitch along all those folds. So fold back the top part so it exposes the first fold, top stitch. Fold that section to the back so it exposes the next fold, top stitch, and do the same for the next 2. Fold this back how it goes, and then baste up each side starting from the bottom to secure our accordion card slots in place. Now we're going to take our 2 side pieces, once again, just making sure my card fits in here. We're going to take our 2 side pieces and we are going to put them right sides together on each side with our card slots. And then we'll sew down each of these sides with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we want to press these so the seam is going towards the side. Once we have that nicely pressed, we're going to top stitch through the sides. Okay, now we're going to do this exactly like we did with the other two pockets. Double check that your cards fit in again. What we're going to do is put the lining right sides together, complete it the same way, top stitching within 3/8 from each side, and those are our 3 pocket pieces complete. Okay, so now it's time to install the male portion of our turn lock or the female portion of your magnetic snap, depending what you do. I'm going to back mine with a piece of Deckful Heavy as well as some tape. I just used the pattern to mark where this placement would be, which is about 1 3/8 of an inch up from the center. Now I want to just add a little extra security behind here for when I go to put in my female part of my lock. So I'm using the pattern piece for the snap placement and just putting a small piece of scrap Peltex in behind for later. On our pattern piece, you're going to see these little lines. We want to mark those on one of these pieces like so. Put our 2 flap pieces right sides together. And what we're going to do is just clip together in between those marks all the way around. Okay, and from the first line to the other line around the flap curvy part of it, we're going to go ahead and sew with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we're only sewing the half that has the curved corners. Right, so now we're going to, right where those lines were that we drew, we're going to snip into them at about 1/4 of an inch or so. We're going to take our pinking shears and trim off the corners, and then go in with the rest and trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance up until to those marks. Just like so. Then you can go ahead and turn this right side out. And go ahead and give this a really good press at the iron. Okay, so now that is done. This is what we have. So we have like, it looks like we have like little wings sticking out. That is okay. I'm going to go ahead and install my nameplate as well. I just kind of have it folded over as to how it will be once it's finished and chose a good spot for it. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that this back lining piece of the flap is up and out of the way. We're going to take our zipper pocket, put it right sides together with the back outside piece. So that's where I have my nameplate on, and we're going to go ahead and clip this in place. So again, the lining part of the bottom of the flap is up and out of the way, hanging out with our flap part that we have already sewn. You will see that this will line up almost exactly with where that little snip was that we did in the side, which is what we want. Again, making sure you're not clipping in that lining open side of the flap. We're going to go all the way around here and just space this in place for now. Once again, double checking that the lining is up and out of the way and we're not sewing through it. Okay, so now we're going to take the divider part. So the part that you want to be showing mostly is going to be face up, I believe. We're going to put this over top of what we had just sewn. Now you're going to find this is slightly smaller than the panel we're working with. That is okay, just bring the raw edges together. The reason it's a little bit smaller is to give it a more of a tight fit once it's all done. We're going to clip this all the way around, matching up those raw edges, and then we're going to baste this in place as well. So that's 2 of our pockets in. Now it's time to do our card slots. We're going to do this a little differently. You're going to take the lining side of the card slots and flip it out of the way like so. So you're opening it up. I'm just going to clip that lining part to the other 2 things we do not want to get sewn in. So the lining of the flap and the top of the flap. You're going to center these card slots right sides together with everything we have sewn and match up that seam, of course. And then we're going to be sewing this with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're all done with basting. Now it's time for the permanent sewing. But we want to make sure that we are starting our sewing right here. So kind of in the crease of where our seam joined the lining and our card slot piece here. So be very aware where your needle is going down. You don't want it to catch the parts that we have hanging up at top there clipped together. And go around with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we want to trim this down a little bit. This is what we have. It kind of looks like it's all over the place right now. So on our corners, I'm going to go on an angle here as close as I can to that stitching without cutting through. Now from where our little cutouts were, where those lines were, we're just going to trim this down to about a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance just on the part that we had sewn, and along the bottom and along the sides, kind of coming out before we hit that seam. And now this is going together similar to how we do a pouch. So the first thing you want to do is take our flap that's already sewn and stuff it in and out of the way where it won't get sewn through. So just kind of stuff it in one of the slip pockets like this. Then bring the 2 lining pieces, so the card slot lining piece and the main flap lining piece, the ones that have the straight edge, bring them right sides together like so. And clip them in place. What we are going to want to do is in the bottom, we want to leave a good sized turning hole for turning this right side out. From about here to here, we will leave open. and we will be starting and stopping at each line, and starting and stopping where our stitching had stopped for the bottom part where the card slots and all that were when we finish sewing that. So you want that line to be continuous, so we will not have a hole at all in these sides here. So go ahead, and it may be a little thick here. You may need a little bit of a hump jumper. I almost did, but I got through it. Sewing to that first line, give it a couple of back stitches because we will be turning through that hole just to strengthen it a little. Go to the other line we drew, back stitch a little bit, and continue around, connecting our stitches with where we had finished our stitching on the card slot end of this pouch. Okay, I'm just on these corners. Again, just going to angle them off without cutting the stitching, and then go ahead and turn this right side out. So I like to say this kind of comes half right side out once we get there. This is a little bit tough, just go nice and slow. It helps if you pull the flap out first, I found, which I'm doing right here, and push it out. And now it's going to look kind of funny because we're going to be seeing the lining side of our card slots here, and that is what we want because this is the bottom of the pouch, and we want to close up this turning hole. So kind of push all of the guts inside. You do not want to be sewing through this by accident. Turn in your raw edges by about 3/8 of an inch or so, clip in place, and then we are going to top stitch this shut. Again, making sure you're not catching any of the guts below this. You can see how it's kind of billowing out because that's our card slots and our zipper pocket and everything. So we're kind of only 2/3 of the way turned out, I guess, but this is how we are going to close up our turning hole. So once you have that clipped in place, go ahead and top stitch that with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's done, go ahead and flip the card slots up and around this way so the exterior will now be on the outside. This is really thick here. Take your time to make sure you're pushing out all of those seams best you can. You may need to stick in a little pointy tool or something, especially in those corners. Because of the thickness, that was the hardest part I found to poke out, but with a little bit of perseverance, you will get it. And there we go. You can top stitch the flap if you like. I didn't think it needed it, so I just left it. Now it's time to go and install the female end of our turn lock. So what I'm doing is folding the flap down and kind of marking where the center of the male part is. You can kind of feel it through it. Mark that center and then go ahead and punch your hole and install that female end of your flip lock, which I have done. We have all of our flaps, it closes, and we're done. All right, that's it. That's all. What did you think of that? Not too hard at all. Lots of layers in this bottom panel here, but nothing too hard to get through. The hardest part about this was probably turning it, and that's only because it's such a small area to be turning through, but you just take your time and you get it, no problem. So yes, thank you again, Emma, for allowing me to do this tutorial. I hope you guys all liked it. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you want to support my channel further, you can always buy me a coffee. That link is down below in the description, or you can even join my membership site and join along in some of our live sew along classes that we do weekly, twice a week. Anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.